This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, students. In the last class, we have discussed about the anatomy and physiological part of the thyroid gland. So, coming to the anomalies of thyroid, we discuss it in two subtypes, that are benign thyroid disorders and malignant diseases. So, the carcinomas, papillary carcinoma, medullary carcinoma, thyroid, etc., comes in the anaplastic carcinoma, etc., comes in the malignancy part. So today we'll discuss about the benign thyroid diseases like Graves, thyroiditis, etc. Coming to the generalized symptoms, a brief refresh of the last class. That is, the hypothyroid symptoms of the thyroid are the weakness, fatigue, and weight gain. Always come from above onwards. So the CNS symptoms are the weakness and fatigue. There is a classical cold intolerance in the hypothyroid patient. And weight gain despite decreased appetite is a classical sign of hypothyroidism. And there is edema of hands and face, and periorbital edema, etc., are also present. And there are otolaryngeal symptoms like there is a slurring of speech, and macroglossia. That is, the size of the tongue increases. Hearing loss, tinnitus, etc., are subject to symptoms, not present in every patient. Comes the gastrointestinal symptoms that are in hypothyroidism. They are constipation, uh, anorexia, dysphagia, etc. And the genitourinary symptoms like polyuria, oligomenorrhea, and menorrhagia might be seen. All these are not present in every such individual. Some of them might present with GIT symptoms. Some may be present with neurological symptoms, etc. Presence of any one or two of those can lead you to a diagnosis of hypothyroid patient. When it comes to the cardiovascular system, there is a peripheral edema and bradycardia in the uh, hypothyroid patients. Then comes the hyperthyroid features. There are the whereas bradycardia is present in hypo, there is rapid heartbeat. Tachycardia is present in the hyperthyroid patient. But there is irritability, anxiety, and easy fatiguability is present. Fatigue is also present in hyper and hypo, but irritability is present in hyper, whereas in hypo there is the patient is very drowsy, gives you a picture of a lazy person. So there is increased sweating and severe cases of hypothyroidism, Graves' disease and all. There is a classical signs of eye signs. Retraction may be present there. Excessive sweating is a classical sign of hypothyroidism. In the GIT part, there is increased bowel movements and patient often presents with diarrhea. In genitourinary symptoms, there are oligomenorrhea and amenorrhea. And in males, there is a chances of libido. So what is libido? So loss of libido is loss of sexual drive. In terms of cardiovascular system, the main classical feature is the tachycardia and palpitations. So, in a patient with hyperthyroidism, suspecting hyperthyroidism, you should always examine the patient's resting pulse rate. That is, you calm down the patient and ask him to lie down for about 15 to 20 minutes then you should see the pulse rate to rule out anxiety, etc. Because any patient coming to the hospital might have a mild rise in the pulse rate. So to rule out that, you should always see the resting pulse rate. Classically, if you do it in an inpatient patient, you should examine the patient in the night, sleeping pulse rate, while the patient is sleeping. So in physical examination, classically a hypothyroidism patient may look lethargic and overweight and very slow to respond to anything you say. Whereas in hyperthyroid patient, they will seem anxious and thinner and apprehensive. So in a clinical scenario, Pemberton sign is a sign to elicit a large retrosternal goiter. So goiter is any thyroid swelling. It's called a goiter, but some goiters can grow so large that they invaginate into the mediastinum. So that is posterior to the sternum. So what happens is to look if the patient is having any signs of retrosternal goiter, you do a Pemberton sign. That is, you ask the patient to elevate his neck uh, and extend his neck and raise his arms above his touching to his ears. So that causes uh, the thoracic outlet which is present, that causes the narrowing of the thoracic outlet, and that leads to engorgement of the veins in the anterior neck. So if there is a goiter, that will be the sign. Oh, these are all hypothyroid system. We'll discuss in detail later that all these things. So in patient with thyroiditis is any itis is an inflammation. So thyroiditis is thyroid inflammation. So there are certain disorders which causes thyroiditis. They are autoimmune, some are infective. So the autoimmune thyroiditis have a very firm and vacillated appearance. So while infective, that is some thyroid gland is least infected gland. Why? Because it has rich vascularity. Thyroid has one of the highly vascular structure present in our body. So whenever there is a rich blood supply, the chances of infection to that disease, to that certain area is very low. But there are some exceptions where thyroiditis can happen. So coming to thyrotoxicosis, that is increase in the thyroid hormones to a toxic level. That is in a layman terms, that is thyrotoxicosis. So to thyrotoxicosis is again more common in women. So always remember, women are very hormone dependent individuals. So any endocrinological disorders, they are more common in women. So just remember it like that. So and again, in thyroid, women are most commonly infected in any type of disease, be it benign disorders or in carcinomas. If a male patient with a goiter, you should always suspect it to be a malignancy. So there are again certain terms in thyrotoxicosis. There are overt thyrotoxicosis, subclinical thyrotoxicosis, and hyperthyroidism. So overt thyrotoxicosis is high serum T4 and T3, but low serum TSH. If the T3 and T4 are high, but thyroid stimulating hormone is levels are low. That is called as overt thyrotoxicosis. And there are some patients with subclinical thyrotoxicosis. These patients have normal T4 and T3 and just below the baseline of the serum TSH. So that gives you a picture that this patient is going to land up in thyrotoxicosis. So if you come across a patient's report with a normal T3 and T4, but a mild decrease in TSH concentration, you should always suspect the patient that he might land up in thyrotoxicosis. So we always follow up the patient. You ask the patient to come back after a 4 to 6 weeks period. You again go for the thyroid hormone analysis. So if that is normal, you can ask the patient to just come and follow up of every 6 months. But if it is abnormal, even then you should go with the drugs. So hypothyroidism is hyperfunctioning of thyroid gland. So the pathophysiology is unregulated release of T3 and T4 hormones from the thyroid gland. So this can also occur in a patient with hypothyroidism where you give a thyroid supplementation. Thyroxine supplementation is given in hypothyroidism patient. But if you do not monitor the dosage and the duration of the course, what happens is the patient keeps on taking the high dose thyroxine. He might land up in thyrotoxicosis. So that is also one of the causes. So I had already said that in while discussing thyrotoxicosis about the various causes of thyrotoxicosis. That is, Graves' disease is one, thyroiditis is one, exogenous thyroiditis, that is hormone induced, that is one. Thyroiditis, as I said, they are very painless. Patient doesn't have a goiter as such. He will have a sometimes a painless swelling, mild swelling, which decreases with the use of NSAIDs and antibiotics in some cases. So these are all different types of etiopathogenesis that causes thyrotoxicosis. Toxic nodular goiter can cause a thyrotoxicosis. Thyroid carcinoma can cause thyrotoxicosis. And pregnancy-related thyrotoxicosis is seen in certain females. This is called as gestational thyrotoxicosis. They usually resolve after the labor. This is in brief about the thing I said earlier. Coming to Graves' disease in proper, this is the most common cause. Graves is the most common cause of thyrotoxicosis, and it is an autoimmune disease. And as I have said, females are 5 times more oftenly presented with Graves' disease than males. So the antibody, which is the classical to Graves' disease, is thyroid receptor stimulating antibody. So these are in this disease, what happens is excessive production of thyroid antibodies, which in turn causes thyroid stimulating antibodies, which causes antibodies to bind to the TSH receptor of the follicular cell. The end result is always thyroid hormone synthesis and secretion increase due to the hyperplasia of the thyroid gland. So due to the increased activity, there is increased hormone synthesis. This leads to hyperthyroidism and gland enlargement. So the presentation is the patient will have very low levels of TSH and there may be diffuse thyroid enlargement. The classic most important thing about Graves is these patients in severe disease can have ophthalmic entities, that is exophthalmos and other eye signs. And localized myxedema can be present in Graves disease, but these exophthalmosis and dermatopathies are seen in very rare cases and very high disease. So there is a scoring system, but that is not important to you. So these are the eye signs. So you can see in the first picture there is a retraction of the eyelids. In the second, you can see very severe periorbital edema. So there are different types of eye signs. To be sure about that, read clinical DAS. So they will give you in detail about the different signs and how to look for those signs. So there are Walraffis, Telvax, Darlimpis, Nash-Ziggers, Mobius, and Joffrey's signs. I'm not going into that in detail because it comes in the clinical scenarios. In case discussions, we can discuss about that things. So just refer DAS for that. The differential diagnosis of crisis, it can be due to thyroiditis or ectopic thyroid tissue. Some patients, in very rare point percentage of patients, might have stuma ovary. That is, ovaries might contain thyroid tissue. These things can, due to the presence of excessive tissue, these things can have thyrotoxicosis features. So the investigations are always the thyroid function test. And then Graves' disease is for TPO antibodies. If it is, those are always positive in about 90% of the patients. So TPO is, can anyone say what is TPO? Thyroid peroxidase antibodies. TPO is thyroid peroxidase antibodies. So, but coming to Graves, the most sensitive is TPO antibody assay, and for a certain degree of authenticity, thyroglobulin antibody is positive in about 40 to 50% of the patients, while thyroid stimulating receptor antibody is positive in about 45% of the patients. So the most important and sensitive investigation is TPO antibody assay. So this is scintigraphy, that is technetium 99 Pertechnet scan, where you can see uptake present in the thyroid. So if it is a dominant nodule, you will see only the uptake in the that is one lobe of the gland. In this patient, it is in the right side. So coming to the treatment part, so always hyperthyroidism can be treated medically. So if there is no signs of gout, or the patient just have clinical features of hyperthyroidism, so drugs are the most commonly used and most effective treatment in hyperthyroidism patients. Those institutes, the dynamites that are propylthyroxine, carbimazole, and methimazole. So most commonly used drugs are these things. these, and we also give propranolol, etc., to decrease the and to limit the palpitation symptoms present in these patients. So the propylthiazole dose is about 100 to 200 mg every 6 to 8 hours. That is a TID dose. That is thrice daily dose. Whereas the methimazole and carbimazole dose are about 20 mg. Most commonly, if the patient is severely hyperthyroid toxic, what we give is 20 mg. Commonly used drug is dosage is 10 mg. So, like any other drugs, will have minor side effects, but always be sure to order a CBP, that is complete blood picture, in a long-standing case of antithyroid drug usage. So the patient can have agranulocytosis. So to look for that, you should always order for a complete blood picture in a long-standing antithyroid drug user. So as I said earlier, the beta blockers are given to minimize the sympathetic overdrive of the hyperthyroidism symptoms. That is tachycardia and palpitations, etc., are present in hyperthyroidism patients. So to decrease that, beta blockers like propranolol are given. So there is radioactive iodine therapy. The advantages are, so to decrease the need for surgery. When all of these fail, the final thing you can do is always surgery, but you should always try for minimal invasive things prior to the surgery. So yeah, the main contraindication for the thyroid iodine therapy is pregnancy. So the main commonly used iodine is iodine 131. So just remember that one, I-131. So dosage and cycles that are not important at your level. So one of the common side effects is the radiation thyroiditis present in post-radiation, post-iodine therapy patients. So, and there is a mild chances of hypothyroidism in these patients. About 10% of the patient might land up in hypothyroidism. So again, pregnancy and breastfeeding mothers are again absolute contraindication. This is because it is a radiation exposure risk. So the chances of the baby getting radiation exposure is higher. So to limit that, so when it comes to absolute contraindications, pregnancy and breastfeeding mothers. So the surgery is depending on the scintigraphy scanning. So if it is a single nodule, hyperactive nodule, a subtotal thyroidectomy, that is removing the one thyroid gland, one lobe of the thyroid gland, which is acting crazy, can be done. So that is subtotal or near total thyroidectomy. What happens in hyperactive gland is, so due to sudden cessation of the thyroid hormone, the patient might land up in thyrotoxicosis crisis. So to limit that, we always give thyroxine supplementation to the patient prior to the surgery. So coming to the ophthalmopathy, in mild cases, there is no need for any intervention because if the hyperthyroidic features, hyperthyroid symptoms are subsiding, that is, if the patient is responding to the treatment, ophthalmic signs also decreases with the drugs itself. But in some patients, due to severe exophthalmos, what happens is you should go for surgery to decompress the ocular involvement. In such patients, you should go for a what do you call resection of the ocular bones, etc., to decompress the eyeball. This is orbital decompression, which I just said. So in this patient, you can see in severe exophthalmos is present. So the patient has underwent surgical decompression. So coming to the what we have discussed is the autoimmune disease, and coming to the thyroiditis. So there are different types of thyroiditis, inflammation of the thyroids. There are acute and subacute and chronic. So acute is always due to the infections, that is bacterial, fungal, or radiation thyroiditis. And in some patients, amiodarone is a drug used in cardiac arrhythmias. So that can also lead to thyroiditis. And subacute thyroiditis, these are viral and granulomatous, that are inflammatory conditions, can lead to subacute thyroiditis. And then chronic autoimmune patients can have Hashimoto thyroiditis. And there are something called as parasitic thyroiditis, which are due to Echinococcus. Those are very, 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 very rare. Hardly there are any publications about that things. The most common ones are these things. So, well, starting the class, I have already said that acute thyroiditis is rare due to the why infections are very rare in thyroid, due to the rich vascular supply present to the thyroid gland. So again the symptoms are the same as thyrotoxicosis. Any inflamed gland can go into an overdrive. So in acute thyroiditis, the treatment is antibodies to the specific microbes present in that. Some might require the NSAIDs to decrease the symptoms of fever, etc. But the fevers are, these things are very rare. So antibody presentation is enough. So coming to subacute thyroiditis, which is also called as TQRN thyroiditis. So viral infections can cause these things. Some viruses like Coxsackie virus, influenza virus, and adenoviruses can cause subacute thyroiditis. So while the acute cases might not present with fever, the subacute cases can be present with the symptoms of fever. Depending on the severity, there may be thyrotoxicosis and there might be hypothyroid features. Thyroiditis, you don't usually see big or defined swelling. For example, in a solitary thyroid nodule or in a multinodular goiter or carcinoma of the thyroid, example papillary, anaplastic, or medullary carcinomas, what happens is you can see a defined swelling with clear-cut margins. And when you palpate, you can palpate the nodules in proper. But in thyroiditis, you cannot define that. You can see a mild something swelling in the thyroid region, but you cannot define it, the borders and edges, etc. So if the patient uses the correct medicines, it will disappear in acute and subacute thyroiditis. That is. So aspirin, that is NSAIDs, are the most commonly used drugs for this. And in some cases, prednisolone, steroid therapy is used. For any inflammation, the most commonly used drugs are NSAIDs and steroids. So if the patient is not responding for NSAIDs, you go for a dose of cycle of steroid therapy. Most commonly used is prednisolone. So again, monitoring of the thyroid hormone level should be done every 4 weeks to know the response. This is the silent thyroiditis, that is in postpartum patients. As the pregnancy is a very hormone dependent event in a female, so every hormone in the body goes into an excessive secretions in that time. So that can lead to thyroid hyperthyroid features also, or hypothyroid features, depending on the situation of the patient. And that one is the silent thyroiditis. So the treatment is the same in any thyroid hyperthyroid patients. Coming to the chronic thyroiditis, that is the Hashimoto's, which is common. In this thing, not like the subacute and acute, you can always have a hard and firm nodule which can be palpated. So that is due to the chronic nature of the disease. So the patient will always be in mild hypothyroid or in euthyroid states. Euthyroid is normal with the goiter presence. The treatment is again levothyroxine, that is thyroxine supplementation. And the chronic thyroiditis is again reduced thyroiditis, which is very rare. So unlike the other things, this causes fibrosis of the gland. So Hashimoto's and any disease which is autoimmune or carcinomatous, anything can be diagnosed based on its histopathological examination. So open biopsy and FNAC is the investigation of choice to differentiate those things. Anti-cancer drugs like tamoxifen and methotrexate are used in reduced thyroiditis to very limiting effect. Steroids are also used. So the main role here is always surgery in reduced thyroiditis. Again, in Hashimoto's thyroiditis, whenever you are doing surgery, you should always be very careful, because as the name indicates, it is an inflammation. So what happens is there is a rich vascular perfusion to the thyroid in such cases. So minute venules and arteries which are not specified. For example, there are innumerous number of minor arteries and veins in the body which are not named. Don't know everything. So we just look for the main arteries and veins. So whenever you are dissecting, these minor things can get ruptured, and bleed profusely in the cases of thyroiditis patients, classically in Hashimoto thyroiditis patient. So that you should be very careful while doing the surgery. And single nodule which is toxic, that is called as toxic adenoma. So, this is most commonly due to the TSH receptor gene mutations. So what happens is in these mutations, the TSH function is not under the control of the pituitary gland. So it goes into an overdrive and causes these toxic symptoms. So I'm not going in detail about every clinical manifestation, because whenever a thing is called toxic, it will always have hyperthyroidic features. So there is no need for me to go in detail every time I am talking about a toxic goiter. So they can present as a solitary thyroid nodule, as the name indicates. It is toxic adenoma. So there is only one hyperfunctioning area in the gland. So that is called as a solitary thyroid nodule in a toxic state or in a hyperthyroid state. That can also be the same thing can also present in a solitary thyroid nodule in a hypothyroid state. So again, the treatment is the same. And as a surgery, here is only lobectomy or hemithyroidectomy, because only one gland and one part of the lobe is involved. We don't need for the removal of entire thyroid gland. So here hemithyroidectomy, or in some textbooks it is called as lobectomy, is enough. Again, toxic adenoma is single gland. Here is toxic multinodular goiter. So there are multiple nodules in the same gland. So again, the clinical features and medical management is the same. But in toxic multinodular goiter, what you do is total thyroidectomy. There are multiple glands. If you leave anything inside, the features again occur. So you should always go for total thyroidectomy. So this is one nodule. So I'll stop here. We'll continue in the next class.